Hey guys, how's it going? So I thought I would do a little video themed on March of the Mammoths about one of the mammoths that I have read. And I thought that this would be nice just to sort of keep March of the Mammoths in the spotlight, and since I read the book for March of the Mammoths, I've seen some people, Big Al Books and Brian over at Bookish doing March of the Mammoths specific videos, so I thought, why not? So yeah, this will be kind of a small review of the first Mammoth I have read. I hope I can get another one of these out to you. I hope I do read another Mammoth. Not entirely sure what that Mammoth will be now, because I'm not entirely certain that I want to read the Decameron right now, in part because of the book I've just finished. So I'll just get to that. As you all know, my first Mammoth was the Mahabharata, a modern retelling by Carole Satyamurti. So the Mahabharata is a vast epic poem that comes out of ancient India. It's over 2,500 years old, or at least that's when it was first sort of redacted and compiled, and it's probably even older than that, or at least parts of it are older than that. And it tells the story of a civil war between two branches of the royal family of the kingdom of Hastinapura, which is a kingdom, I believe, somewhere in northern India. And the two factions are the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And the Pandavas are the rightful rulers. The oldest of the Pandava brothers, Yudhishthira. He is the oldest of the Pandava brothers, and he is he's the rightful king of Hastinapura. He and his brothers are the sons of Pandu, who was king before him. And the Kauravas are the sons of Dhritarashtra, who is the younger brother of Pandu. The oldest of Dhritarashtra's sons, Duryodhana, covets the kingdom for himself, even though obviously the kingdom should go to Yudhishthira. And that forms the real kernel of the story of this epic. So this version of the Mahabharata was published in 2015. Carole Satyamurti is an English poet who has published other volumes of poetry. This is, I guess, probably her biggest work to date. It's called a modern retelling in the subtitle, because it's really not a translation per se by Carole Satyamurti. So what she did to write this was she worked from an older translation of the Mahabharata that was done by K.M. Ganguly, and it's older. I think it's from the 19th century, and it's the only complete translation of the Mahabharata that was ever done. But it's not known for being particularly readable. I haven't sampled it really, but she just says herself that it's not always that readable. But it's a very faithful English translation, and it's obviously comprehensive. And so she worked from that translation, and she would read sections of that, and then sort of mull it over, and then compose versions of the Ganguly translation. And she cuts out a fair amount of the extra side stories and other sort of digressions that are in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is the longest epic poem in the world. I think I remember reading that it's in its entirety, it's about 10 times as long as the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. So it's massive, hence why has only been one full translation. So she cuts out a lot from it, because there are a lot of side stories that feature minor characters. There's a lot of sort of information given about various, I think, aspects of warfare and culture and customs at the time that she leaves out for the sake of creating a better narrative. And so really her goal in writing this wasn't necessarily an entirely faithful translation, obviously, because this obviously is highly trimmed, but in creating a version of it that will appeal to English speakers, something that would be on par with something like Milton's Paradise Lost, a work in English to stand in the place of the Mahabharata. And personally, I prefer something like that to translation that is literal, because it makes it much more readable. Or hopefully. I haven't read the Ganguly translation, but and I'm not sure I will, because it sounds just like a massive undertaking. But anyway, so that is just some background. I think if I went too in-depth with my thoughts on the Mahabharata, I would be overwhelmed, because there is a lot packed into this book. Even trimmed, it packs a heavy punch. There are so many themes that you could talk about in relation to this book, that I think if I tried to do any of them any kind of justice, I would just end up sort of giving a vague, a vague synopsis of my own thoughts, which already are not fully formed. You could talk about, the way that there are sort of stories within stories within stories here, and how that relates to storytelling. You could talk about fate and free will, and how people respond to it, and you could compare that to how that tends to be done in the West, and you could look at the sort of moral ambiguity of a lot of the gods who appear. You could talk about the problem of theodicy that appears. Are the gods actually just? You could talk about the moral ambiguity of a lot of the quote-unquote good guys who do a lot of shady things, in ostensibly in the service of a good cause. You could talk about duty, and when doing your duty and doing the right thing and conflict, or when following an oath you made and doing the right thing conflict, and what you should do in that circumstance. And you could talk about the themes from the Bhagavad-Gita, which is this sort of section of the Mahabharata that's sort of thrust into the middle of it, which is a philosophical discussion between Arjuna, who is one of the Pandavas, and Krishna, who is his friend, who is the embodiment of Brahman, who is the sort of supreme god of the universe. And you could talk about the themes in that of, renunciation and release from worldly desires, and how hard that is. You could talk about the horrors of war and the way that is explored in this book, because there's obviously this huge battle that takes place that takes up about 200 pages of the book, where thousands or maybe millions of soldiers just die in this war for this dynastic struggle. And there are so many things to talk about that if I tried to talk about all of them, I would lose my mind. So I just want to say that this book has an incredibly gripping narrative. There's not a dull page in it. The fact that it's written in verse actually helps, I think, push the narrative forward, because that verse gives it the sort of a feeling of urgency that prose doesn't. Prose, when an epic like this is rendered into prose, it can kind of make it feel a lot more ponderous for me. And so I think the verse really helps to drive you forward in reading. There are compelling characters. All the characters here are deeply human and flawed. None of them are paragons of goodness. None of them are unambiguously evil, although there are certainly characters who are harder to sympathize with others. And all of the misfortune that befalls a lot of people in this book is not brought about through unambiguous wickedness on the part of anyone. It's actually brought about through good intentions often. And so my favorite thing about this book was the combination of a great story, a really gripping story, a lot of wisdom packed into it throughout. Again, the Bhagavad-Gita isn't the only philosophical section of the Mahabharata, and just a deeply human warmth. These characters experience, even though they're these elevated characters who are in this dynastic struggle, they experience emotions that we all deal with. And I was incredibly moved by parts of this, especially towards the end. So I think it's great. I think it will become one of my new favorite books. I do want to read other versions of the Mahabharata. There is a Penguin Classics version that is bigger, that is longer, and perhaps more comprehensive, and there is another abridged one, I think, translated by William Buck, And who knows, maybe I will actually read the Ganguly translation eventually, but this book was great. It was a great way to spend my March of the Mammoth. If I don't read another Mammoth, then March of the Mammoth will have been a success for me. So yeah, I just wanted to recommend it if you like these sort of old epics, and if you like, you know, really grand stories, but that have a lot of wisdom to teach, and a lot of, you know, again, just very human moments, like the Iliad, and the Odyssey. So yeah, anyway, I think that's where I'll leave it. Very surface level review, I think. And I think that might be appropriate, just again, because this is a big book, it's a bit overwhelming. So yeah, anyway, give me your thoughts if you have read the Mahabharata, or if you haven't. I'm happy to hear people's thoughts anyway. Yeah, I hope I can do another one of these review videos. Like I said, part of the reason I don't want to read the Decameron now is because I'm actually hungering for another story that's as epic in scope and emotion and wisdom as the Mahabharata, or something that can at least compare to it. And I don't feel like the Decameron is gonna match it in that regard. So I feel like I need something else similar to the Mahabharata, and I have a few books I could pick from, but we will see what I end up doing. Yeah. Anyway, I'm trailing off now. So I'm gonna say goodbye, and thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you all in my next video. Bye, guys.